Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Studio Live today, and welcome to Spring and Songtember. We're about to spring into Songtember with something that we've done. We did it last year because this artist released a song all about spring, and despite the fact that he's on the other hemisphere and it's actually not spring there, it is here in Australia. So I would like to welcome aboard podcaster, producer, engineer, studio owner. He wears so many hats. He is the one, the only Mr. Lij Shaw. How you doing, Lidge?
Good. Great to be here, dude, and great to see everybody jumping in on the chat. Howdy,
Oh,
everyone. Jade, Thomas, the Mix Club.
plenty of folks will join in. If you got questions for Lidge, if we'll get Lidge to give himself a little bit of a better explanation of who he is and what he's all about. But if you got questions, we are here to be interactive. So just stick a big Q in front of your comment if you would like to ask Lidge a question. He has a wealth of experience in the studios and the home studio world, and a great songwriter too, as we'll talk about a bit later. But Lidge, for the few folks around this community who don't know who you are and what you do, what's the Lij Shaw Recording Studio Rockstars story?
Okay, so I'm Lij Shaw, and I'm here in East Nashville, Tennessee. So other side of the planet from you guys. It's actually getting close to like the first day of fall here.
Yeah.
So we're just going, into September like you are. And I'm joining you from my studio, which is a home studio that I built behind my house in a converted garage called the Toy Box Studio. And I moved into the house in 2000 and then finally opened the doors of my studio in 2007, kind of moved it from the house into an official space. And I've been making records here ever since then. And first part of my career, I was traveling all over the place and making records in studios everywhere on major label kind of stuff. And then I finally decided to just settle into my space here. And along the way in 2015, I decided that I wanted to start a podcast to be able to talk about making records all the time, which is, let's be honest, that's what you love doing anyway. So might as well turn it into a full-time occupation. So I started Recording Studio Rockstars, doing interviews with producers and engineers. I started with all the people I knew here in Nashville, and then sort of spread out, meeting people in LA, New York, all across the world. So, and Pete right there in Australia and many others.
Sunny Australia, yeah. No, it's a privilege, and Lidge has helped me along the way, and I know helped thousands of people, tens of thousands by now, through your podcast and through your help and assistance, not only make music but learn how to make their own music as well. Which means that if you got questions, throw them Lidge's way, because he'd be happy to answer anything you've got going on. We'll do a quick roll call here, Lidge, and say good day to some of the fine folks who've joined us here live.
Yeah,
we've
please.
got Punky Ann, we've got Princess LDG. There's Thomas Christ, our wonderful moderator, who has thrown a link to your YouTube channel, so folks can go and check out what Lidge has got going on over there. Jenny Jolivet, hello to you. We've got John Swanson, still Illa, East Nashville, my neck of the woods. There you go, in Madison now, just over the bridge. So we got folks from all around here. Joe and Barry Glenn, hello to you. Hello Jamie Malander, Queen Bee, and happy Songtember to all, because as you know, Lidge, we do this sort of Songtember community songwriting thing, and you were here to help us kick it off last year as well.
That's right.
It was a great time, and you had a spring related song which was really appropriate that you wrote with your daughter, which we'll play a little later. We'll make that a tease. We'll give that a little play later on. But it's always a pleasure to have a chat with you. What's been going on recently? Last time we talked about some of the challenges you were having maybe with home studios in the Nashville area. How's that all turned out?
That's going great. So the extremely short version was 2015. The city of Nashville tried to shut down my studio, saying if you live in a home residence, you can't work professionally from your house and have a customer come over. That was the distinction. And so we fought that for years. I fought it both in the courts and also in the city council. And in 2020, we finally passed a new law legalizing home studios in Nashville and allowing everybody to make studios. And now people are building them all over. So pretty amazing. And then more recent stuff, we changed the law. They sort of put in some not so good bits then we kept our court case going. We made it to the Tennessee Supreme Court last year. And then they got a little bit spooked by that. And so they quietly removed the not so good bits from the law. So that improved things. And then there's still a handful of limitations on what we can do. And my take is I want it all. So we're keeping the court case going, and we're back in the courts, and just trying to win the whole thing so that essentially it just says, you know what, you can't as long as we're not bothering anybody else by making music professionally in our home studios, if we want to, you can't tell us we can't.
Yeah, it's such a cool thing. I remember in my closet here, I've got my Save Our Studios T-shirt as well as the Toy Box Studios. So I've been an old school Recording Studio Rockstars and Lij Shaw fan. So it is very cool because again, a lot of people, it's like here in Adelaide we have a similar but different problem where we've got all these apartments being built right next to places, clubs and pubs where live bands have been playing for decades, and they gentrify these areas and people move in and they're like, hey, it's too loud here. We need to shut down the live music scene.
It's funny that you say that, because the very cup that I'm drinking water out of, anybody here who's joining from Nashville might know this story. Soul Shine Pizza was a live pizza place with a live outdoor stage on the upper deck, and everybody loved it and bands were always playing. And then it gentrified the area. They built condos across it, and then the people in the condos were like, you guys are making music. It's too loud. We can't go to sleep. And it's like, why'd you build a condo where all the music happens?
It's a crazy thing. It's it's weird. And when I first heard that of like not being able to run a home studio, and it's a weird thing. I think people have this perception that, you're running a studio, you're probably having skeezy dudes just like loading in with giant amps at like 2 a.m. And it's like, no, I'm running a business here. We're creating music and I know what I'm doing. So it is crazy, but fighting the good fight and I think that's why I respect you, Lidge, is that you're doing the hard yards that other people people less strong would have just said, hey, too hard. I guess I'm doing something different now. I guess I'm going to go and dig holes for a living or something else. But
as you guys would say down there, most people would have just gone on walkabout.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So in terms of music, what's been happening with you lately in terms of your own music, but I guess producing music as well? And then, as I said, we'll dive into sort of some topics around songwriting and creating, because that's what a lot of the folks here in the audience are about to do.
Yeah. Well, so for me, I'm always aspiring to write more songs and create more music in the studio. I've spent, decades helping. One way I like to say it is I've spent decades helping other people realize their musical dreams. And I'm like, I want to do my music now, so I know that's a strong desire for many of us. And, it's really where the name of the podcast came from. It was like Recording Studio Rockstars. It's like, we want to be rock stars too. We're the ones who help make records in the studio. Yeah. So I've done it different ways. I'll write a song that I'm feeling. Sometimes I like to just come into the studio and just play around with an idea, come up with something, and then just say, all right, what am I going to sing about today? And I'll take anything that's on my mind, because what I've learned is there's no perfect song to be written. It's like you just got to do something. So, pick a thing that you were thinking about recently and just start writing about it. You can always change the words later. So sometimes I'll write like that. This summer, I had a cousin who was turning 50, and we were throwing a big family party. And I was like, we need to write a song, a 50th birthday party song. So I started one and, was texting back and forth with my cousin and my brother. And then we whipped a whole epic. I think there were 12 verses in it. Songs like that get really long.
Yeah.
So that, we did one of those. That's really fun. I like writing stuff like that because you have a mission, you have an idea. You're like, okay, well, this song's about something. So now I just got to remember all the stories I can think of for this person. And then this weekend, tomorrow, I got a whole bunch of friends loading into the studio, and we're going to be making music all weekend long. And that's a project that we refer to as poetry scores. So essentially, one of my buddies who was a singer in our band, he's been a life career writer and newspaper editor, and he's always been a big fan of poetry. So he kind of didn't want to sing quite as much. So he started just taking all these favorite poems that he was finding and just sending them out through group text messages to a whole bunch of people that were all friends and, musicians that he knows. And then those of us who want to just grab one and say like, oh, I'll write a song out of that. So it kind of takes away, the pressure of having to come up with something to say. And now it's just sort of like a writing exercise where you're like, okay, I'm going to take this poem. How do I fit it to music? Do I want to use all the words? Do I want to not use all the words? And what I've found is that the process of putting a framework on creative ideas really, really helps, because it just gives you a way to approach it. It just says, if you've got a band coming into your studio and you've got one day or one night to record a song, well, then maybe that's your framework. And you're like, we just got to do it, get it done. Or if you've got a song that, needs to copy the chords from something else or needs to use a poem from somewhere. So that's pretty fun. And then on the professional side of things, I've been working with a variety of independent artists that are really great. I really enjoy doing rock stuff, working with bands and I like guitars, I like distortion, I like things like that. And so there's one of the artists is a guy named Chris Chamness, and he came in to work with me recently, and we had been producing full band productions in the studio, which always seemed to take a while. It just take longer, and it's like, you can spend a day just doing bass on a couple of songs or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he said, I want to do acoustic versions of these songs. So that became our framework. And it was like, he just came in for a couple of days and we recorded great acoustic on 5 songs. And then he did these great vocal takes. And it's all sort of in the vein of Pinball Wizard by The Who. It's kind of that sort of vibe,
Yeah. That's
and
so cool.
I'll share one other thing. So that prompted, we were doing the vocals and it didn't quite fit the acoustic. And I realized that the acoustic had a room mic on it. So we decided to cut all our vocals with the same room mic in the same spot. And it was like a magic trick for making this whole thing come together.
Wow. So for those that may sort of not understand that, so using a room mic, having that room sound and recording everyone together, was the purpose of that to kind of make you sound like you're in the same live space? Was that kind of the vibe you were going for?
But it wasn't everybody. It's just one person.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So we did the acoustic guitars. I set those up in stereo and I used a pair of these Roswell Pro Audio mini K87 microphones. Actually, I think I used the 47s for that one. And then I have a stereo room mic that's up in the loft upstairs. So if a band was playing in there, it's the same mic I would have used to, add some room sound to the band. And it just does a really cool thing, if you do a room mic when people are singing, then the quiet stuff sounds normal and up close. But then when you really belt a note, because these guys, the 2 artists I'm working with, they really can sing loud. So sometimes that feels like it's overloading a close mic. But when you have the room mic, it just sort of like spreads out into the room and it sounds like it makes more sense.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
See, there's a cool tip there. There's a lot of good things in there because, again, a lot of people are approaching their song timbre and they're looking for ideas, ways to do things differently. And you can do a simple version of that. If you've got a 2-channel interface and you've got 2 microphones, move them around your room, find different ways in your space to actually get different sorts of sounds. You don't have to have a high-end studio like Lidge to try out different miking techniques. You can just play around with what you got.
I love recording in non-studio spaces. Yeah. Just this last weekend, I went to a cabin, rented a cabin for the weekend, and I wrote 2 songs in the cabin. Just
cool
with this. I had this right here. This Lewitt Pure Tube microphone,
nice,
which I've been using on the podcast. And I was like, I'll just take that, and I plugged it into this little portable studio called the Isotope Spire, which I've really enjoyed using. Yeah, and it's a great sound. It's really fun to sing into a great mic like that. When you're writing, because then you come up with an idea and you're like, ooh, that sounds good. That must be a good idea.
Yeah, as you know, it's something I'm on board with because as a mobile creator and something we've chatted about as well. When I was on your podcast, we talked about recording using your iPad and using your phone, and yeah, you use the Isotope Spire, which is a cool little sort of portable studio all-in-one device, and yeah, you can basically record wherever, whenever, with whatever
Yeah.
you've got at the time, and it's a great way to sort of capture. And you know, back in the day, it would just be a tape recorder to capture a little idea. Now you
Four
can almost
tracks.
produce, yeah, the old 4-track tape machine, but these days you can almost produce entirely on your phone. A lot of people do make really good music just using their phone and plug it in their microphone and away you go. So very cool stuff there. But yeah, I love the other ideas you have. So just writing like sort of that stream of consciousness that you talked about, whatever's on your mind, just walking into the studio and just start going for it, spewing it out. The event song, the birthday song, that's a
Yeah.
cool thing. I know a lot of people have done that, and a lot of people, if you have created songs for, you know, if there's a podcast you love, if there's a YouTuber or a channel that you love, make something for them and send it to them. It's actually really cool. A few people that have done that for me, they've just made a song about something to
Oh,
do with me on the
nice.
channel. It's a great way to sort of get it in. We were talking before about the fact that a lot of people, and I'm sure you get emails from people that are like, Lidge, I need your help. Can you please help me do this thing and this thing and this thing? If you flip that around, and if someone says to you, hey, I made you a tribute song to the Recording Studio Rockstars podcast because you've given me a lot of help, I mean, how chuffed would you be with that? And it's a
Yeah,
project someone
it's
can sink their teeth
great.
into. So yeah, doing things like that's pretty cool. And the poetry's that's fascinating. So that's another cool thing. And I guess in a group you could do is collaborating with different people's lyrics and being able to sort of share different things around. Because I must admit, I'm always writing to my own lyrics and my own sounds. But yeah, someone else's
No, it's
stuff.
cool. I mean, it's fun. I like working with people. I like doing stuff, collaborating in the studio, you know. I mean, I work from my own home studio all day and it gets boring sometimes. I'm just like,
Yeah,
God, I'm just staring at a computer screen, you know.
yeah,
So hey, I just wanted to give a shout out to some
mm,
people jumping
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Um, I don't know what the Princess LDG said. Hey, cool, Falcro. Oh, that's the
Uh,
Falcro. That's a person.
yeah, there's
Cool.
another one of the users. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Mix Club was talking about having the mini K47s. Those are great mics.
Yes. Yep.
And then he asked, Mix Club asked if I still have the old MCI. I do
Yeah.
not. I
Oh,
actually sold
yeah.
it and I switched things around. You don't really see it, but right underneath the camera here, I have what's called an Argosy desk now, and it's basically a modern desk surface where I have a pair of the SSL UF8 fader mixers and the UC1. So I've got sort of a digital mixer for digitally mixing in Pro Tools, which I'm really enjoying because I had
Yeah.
already been doing so much mixing in the computer. I was like, let me just set up my workflow where everything is just trying to make the computer experience better for me.
Yeah.
And then it also allowed me to put in these incredible speakers. Well, I could show you. You want me to show you a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, I'll
Let's take
just
a
lift the
tour.
camera up. You
So
might see some junk.
nothing
So let me
worse than
see.
what
So there's the
we're used to. It.
UF8s. These are sorry. These are the SSL controllers.
Nice.
There we go. Right there, and that's the UC1. It's all upside down for you right now, but that's the
Yeah.
that lets me control the EQ, and
Cool.
then you can see the desk is like that. So it's a big space with a nice work surface top, and then I can put some rack gear in there, and I can, put hard drives or like a controller back there if I want. I also get a little mini extra screen,
Cool.
and can use. This is a cool trick for those of you who have old mobile phones and you're not sure what
Mm.
to do with them. You can still use them because, like, I'll typically have. I think the batteries are dead right now, but I'll have just a sound level meter app on there
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
that it
yeah.
tells me how loud I'm listening to music. So
Wow.
that's it. And then these are the speakers that I worked with a studio designer named Carl Tatz, and he put these in. And oh my Lord, they sound so amazing.
Very cool.
So, but I also have, not everything's fancy, right? So then I just have like this Avantone mix cube
Mm.
for mixing in mono. And then back there, I've got a pair of the Atom Audio T5V speakers. And I'll still use all that stuff a lot when I'm making mixes, producing, and just trying to make sure that it sounds great,
Very cool. There you go. There's some aspirational stuff for you folks. Don't worry, if you're rocking your Scarlett 2R2 and you're plugging in your $100 microphone, you can still make great music. But yeah, there's some cool stuff in there for sure. And
you can definitely make great music that way. One of the things that doesn't matter which interface or what gear you got is the stuff that's being created in the computer. And I know you're a big Logic fan. I know you guys have been talking about iPad Logic and stuff. So one of the artists I work with, Hunter Cross, is a rock musician. He brought in his demos and he had cut everything with the drummer track.
Oh yeah.
And we used it right through the mix and it sounds phenomenal.
Yep. Yeah.
And all that is all in the computer. So you guys, there's no reason why with a little Focusrite interface, you can't make the same sound come out of the final mix. Yeah. I mean, you got to, do the mix right and use the right plugins and things, but
yeah. So cool. So do you miss, so obviously going more into the box and going from the analog to digital, all digital, is there anything you miss about having that?
I mean, the MCI is a beautiful piece of history and it sounds incredible. And those mic pre's sound really great. And I would have loved to keep it, but I would have had to been able to, I still would have done the same thing I'm doing now. I just would have, had a big studio and slid the console off to the side and then thought about it more like, something for creating sounds on. Yeah.
Oh, very, very cool stuff. Thank you for sharing that one. The other thing you talked about there with the acoustic version as well, like sometimes changing it up. And I know a lot of folks with their songwriting are thinking about, what do I write and what sort of style do I write it in? And going like a full band sound and then going, hey, what if we flip this on its head and what if you just play this really stripped back and just an acoustic sound or just a single instrument sound? That's another cool tip. So I hope folks are taking notes here because there's a lot of cool information for you there.
Coldacre's taking notes. Says, I wonder what his address is and when he's not home. Well, Coldacre, where are you? And you in Nashville? Just send me a message, man. We'll go get a coffee.
Coldacre's in Melbourne, so it'll be a $3,000 plane trip to get over. Just
expensive coffee.
Little bit expensive.
Oh yeah, and Coldacre spotted the synths. I got into some wanting to explore synths recently, and it's really fun. So those are just the Behringer modular synths, and then that's another Behringer right there, and then this is the Native Instruments complete synthesizer or controller mix, MIDI controller. So that interfaces with Contact, and it's really great because makes it really fun to just like pull up sounds easily and dial them in a little bit.
Super cool. Nice. So we called this stream Spring into Songtember, and we'll play your very cool spring tune in a moment, and I'll get you to sort of introduce that and tell us a bit about how that came about. But what advice do you have, Lidge, for folks who are attacking this maybe for the first time, or maybe they've coming back to songwriting and coming back to recording after a while? Obviously, it's like there's probably 1,000 things you could say about this, but generally when you're working with an artist that's maybe a little rusty or maybe getting back into it, what do you do to help them sort of relax into it and start creating again and songwriting and recording? What's your go-to methods for that?
Well, if you're trying to help somebody get comfortable again, at the early stage of recording with you, and you're talking about helping them relax into writing music, so one of the, some of the discussions I've had are, an artist might have ideas for playing the guitar part first, but then they're trying to come up with the lyrical stuff. And I have a real cliche radar. So like when I hear something and I'm like, oh boy, that, that sounds like kind of a cliched line right there. I look at it and I try and think to myself, well, how can I explain to them why that is and maybe why it would be better to do something more original. And I think one of the things about cliches and lyrics is if you stop for a second and you think about it and you're like, what does this really mean? And like, would I really say this thing? I mean, like we all know what it means because everybody says it. But, for somebody originally, it was an original idea, it was an original thing to say. So I think looking for ways to be more creative with lyrics. taking a cliche and saying, what's another way you could maybe say the same idea? And then also encouraging a songwriter to say, to describe more than tell. So instead of saying like, I got up this morning, I went to the store and I bought a coffee and there you were, you think like, okay, how could I describe all that instead of just saying it's like a, plot by plot song lyric. The sun was bright and shining through the window. Oh, that sounds like a quote from the Spring song. So that kind of stuff. What did somebody? Tremor Bear says, "How do you spell cliche?"
Cliche. It's got to have the little accent over the e in the cliche. I love that, and I must admit, someone gave me some great advice one time, and it could have well have been you, Lidge. But they talked about when the whole describing, the whole sort of describing more than telling. You think in terms of senses, because quite often we use eyes. So it's like, I saw this and then I saw this and I saw this. What did you hear? What did you smell? What did you feel? What did you touch? And if you start using your senses, you can rewrite things in such a way. So that coffee is like, the smell of the fresh ground beans intoxicated me as I heard the whispers of, you can get into very different territories if you just start thinking different senses in terms of that.
Yeah, and depending on where you are too, be careful about writing about coffee, because that itself can be kind of cliche. Because think about how many people are sitting in a coffee shop trying to think of something to write. So, but that writing from the senses is so important, and I kind of learned that from a guy named Pat Pattison, who teaches lyric writing at Berklee School of Music. And that was eye-opening for me, because it was this idea that like, okay, you can talk about, your senses are what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel, temperature, what you can taste, what you can smell. There's also, there's two, I forgot the names of it, but one is like, how do you feel? Like, I feel sick, that's a different sense, or I feel well. And then another is kinetic, like the feeling of falling. Sort of feeling of motion. So there's quite a few to draw from. And the explanation that really got me was the idea that when you talk about it, when you describe the feeling of something, then then the listener, you're trying to come up with lyrics where when the listener hears it, they now conjure up the image in their own mind, and it belongs to them. And that's where the power of that communication in song lyrics is.
Creating that imagery that can, it's like reading a book. It paints a picture as opposed to a video. And I don't know, I love watching a music video, especially one as creative as yours that we'll get to in just a jiffy. But there's something about just listening to music, closing your eyes, putting on good headphones, and then just kicking back and just taking that mental journey and listening to the music and letting it take you. And it'll be different for everyone too. That's the cool thing.
Right.
As a creator, it can be different for every listener as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like anybody here, I challenge you to think of a song that you loved that did not somehow belong to you when you listened to it. Like, would you love it if it wasn't meaningful to you?
Yeah.
So find ways to do lyrics that allow the listener to own it more than you, the writer.
Oh, man, so many good tips here. I'm taking notes frantically here so we can implement these in our Song Timber songs. We're at the midway mark here of the show, folks. If you do have any questions for Lidge, go ahead and throw them here in the chat. We're going to take a break here in the middle and play the very, very cool song that Lidge did last year, and then talk about that for a little bit. But one question before we go. Are you going to Cypress Hill with the Nashville Symphony? I'm so excited. Cypress Hill coming and playing with the Nashville Symphony?
I don't know. I hadn't heard about that yet, but that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I don't have plans yet.
That's pretty funny, because on The Simpsons, they were like, they got the orchestra for Cypress Hill, and the joke was, oh no, we mostly play classical music. So I guess they've just owned it. Now Cypress Hill with the orchestra is very cool. I know, I must admit, I love a good sort of rock with orchestra. Ben Folds playing with orchestras has always been very cool. I know from, he's done a lot of stuff around Nashville as well. And it's just
I got to record him with his little orchestra at my Bonnaroo studio one year.
Before we move on, yeah, you talked about recording in different places. That is super cool. And if people want to go back in the archives of your channel, I'm sure they'll find some videos and some footage because I remember watching it back in the day. But yeah, so you had the hay bale studio there at Bonnaroo, right? You'd record artists literally as they were coming off or going onto stage. You want to just tell folks a little bit about that? Because that's an
Yeah.
amazing story.
So Bonnaroo is a huge music festival just south of Nashville. It's like 80,000 people, 60,000 people in the big audience. And so it'll be bands all weekend long, and then there's a radio area, and like any band would want to do, if you're trying to climb the charts with your song and get noticed, you've got to be friendly with radio, and you've got to like record a song for that radio station. And so this was like a one stop for the band, so they could come in to I got invited to come down and set up a recording studio there, and they would bring in a double wide trailer, the kind of thing that looks like an office, or just like a mobile home, or it looks like an office trailer that you'd see on a construction site. And then we would team up with a local farmer and pile up hundreds of bales of hay around it, so it would soundproof the studio, because these huge stages were right there and all the sound would come into our studio. It wasn't us bothering the neighbors, it was the neighbors bothering us. And so that's what we did. And so then an artist would come through and they'd record 3 songs with me, and I'd set up some sort of mixer and headphones, and I would just I had a team of great people working with me, and we would set up with them in like 10 minutes. We had for sound check in each band, and then we just get a live mix down to 2-track, and then that would get mastered right on the spot by our mastering engineer, and then the radio stations could play it all around the country.
So cool. I love it. Yeah. And it's just, again, it shows that we live in the future, that you could do that even then. We're talking years and years ago. And now these days, the instantaneous stuff, like the fact that you're there, I'm here in Adelaide, South Australia, and you're in East Nashville, and we're just having a leisurely chat in front of 30, 40 people watching live, and a few hundred that are going to watch on the replay. Still blows my mind that we can do this without audio and our video these days. It's crazy
and
stuff.
It's quick too. I mean, I feel like we're having a real conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. The lag, the delay, it's not bad at all. We are going to take a break here for the middle of the show. We're going to play a song here. Do you want to give us a little bit of the backstory about this song, Lidge, and then we'll dive into some of the techniques you used and anything else that you wanted to talk about in the second half.
So this is a song that I've always, had a guitar. I'm always banging out a guitar and recording ideas on voice memo. It's the savior of songwriting,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I found voice memo. I mean, before that, it was little micro cassette recorders and things like that. But when I've been a single dad since for years, and when my kid was little, it'd be a school night. It'd be a Sunday night, and school's on Monday, and so that was always like shower night, getting ready for school to start the next week. And so while she was just taking a shower, I'd go in and, sit in there and just like bang out chords on the guitar, because she's a great singer and she loved just sort of singing in the shower to whatever was, echoing over. And so I was banging out these chords one day, and it was springtime here in Nashville, beautiful weather. She loved to just play outside all day long, and she'd run over to her neighbor's, to her friend's house and go play and then come back. And she started singing the lyrics, "Spring, spring, it's an amazing thing with the birds and the bees and the flowers." And I got that on the tape. And then I listened to it later and I was like, holy crap, that's a great lyric, So I took it and I thought, I'm just going to go down and write that song. So, came down to my studio and sort of wrote out the verses and wrote the rest of it. And then her older sister, Cara, came in and sang harmony with me on it. And I just played the drums on it and played all the guitar parts, and the guitars were actually, it's kind of fun. One of the things I like about recording yourself is it gives you permission to experiment,
Yeah.
So I played a guitar that I don't usually play, but I owned. It's called the Vantage, and I put a capo on it, and I plugged it into the computer, and I played it through Amplitude.
Yeah.
Using the amp simulator. I didn't have to. I've got plenty of guitar amps here, and I could have, cranked it up and done whatever I want. But I tried that out, and and then finished the song out, and it turned out really cool. And then the video. So it took me a long time to finally actually release it and share it with the world. You know how it goes. Sometimes you just send it to friends and stuff like that. And then once I actually had a podcast, I was like, all right, I need to really actually put this stuff out and start putting out my own music officially on a small label. So I work with my friend Megan Gohill at Hollywood Recording Studio Records. It's a mouthful. He's got a studio, and he's always had a digital distribution label. And I thought, I want to do a video for this song too. So I just went over, I was like, I'm just going to knock it out, not get stuck on any idea. I went over to Fiverr, and I found somebody there who does lyric videos. And I was like, I want to make a lyric video out of this. And that's what this is.
Cool stuff. I love it because I love the experimentation. I love the backstory. I love everything about this. So
it's fun because since it's a seasonal song, you get to keep releasing it.
There you go.
And I realized not just once every year, but twice, because Pete's in Australia and it's first day of spring for you guys.
Exactly. So this is going to become a spring tradition here. This is year 2. So I think for the future, this will be a springtime tradition that we'll have Lidge on the show. We will play this tune. So sit back and relax, folks, and enjoy this one. This is Spring. Spring is an amazing thing. Lij Shaw here on Studio Live today.
This morning and I rubbed my eyes and looked out the window to my surprise. Well, the birds were singing a song for me, and the blossoms in the cherry tree were blooming for the whole world to see. Because spring is an amazing thing, with the birds and the bees and the flowers. You go outside and you play all day, and you don't come in for hours. So I jumped out of bed with nothing to lose. I'm shaking off these winter blues, feeling like the world is evergreen. I'm gonna go outside, never look around, gonna let this sunshine come on down. Everything is beautiful and free. Well, spring is an amazing thing, with the birds and the bees and the flowers. You go outside and you play all day, and you don't come in for hours. And there ain't no good reason to miss out on this season of love. Gonna ride my bike in the neighborhood, gonna see my friends, I'm feeling good. Come on out, you know it's time to play. We can set up a stand and sell lemonade. Won't you take my hand, we got it made. Everything is beautiful today. Because spring is an amazing thing, with the birds and the bees and the flowers. You go outside and you play all day, and you don't come in for hours. Well, spring is an amazing thing, with the birds and the bees and the flowers. You go outside
There you have it, Mr. Lij Shaw there. Spring, spring, an amazing thing. No, we don't need to play any more music. We don't have the copyright for that one. Very cool stuff there, Lij. Thank you for allowing us to play that one. And I've thrown a link in the chat, and you can also get it on Lidge's channel, which is all down below in the description. So yeah, just awesome stuff. And what sort of reception has that received? Because obviously you got lots of views on there, lots of likes. People seem to really dig it. Very hooky, very vibey.
Yeah, I was surprised. We put it out. I think the first time we released it, we focused on the Spotify link, and that got some listens, and that was great. And then I did the lyric video, and I did a very intentional release combination of releasing it, but then also sharing it here, or like, Ian Shepherd over at Production Advice UK. He and the mastering show, he mastered it. So we did a little live stream where he talked about his mastering too, which I was very lucky because he really made it sound great with the final touch. But it now has like 32,000 views on that video. So yeah. It just like blew me away that it got a whole bunch of views on there. And it's fun. I mean, I think one of the things is you kind of don't know. You kind of never know whether something's going to do really particularly well or I think it's safe to assume that in a lot of likelihood, you're more inclined to get not that many listens, when you're making your own music, but occasionally something just really hits. So yeah, but don't even worry about that stuff.
Well, that's the thing, and yeah, I talk about that a lot, and it's a sort of part of the community here, and the create, record, release philosophy we have is that I'm a big hockey fan, and the old Wayne Gretzky quote of "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So if you're not creating and recording and sharing your music, you're never going to get something that people are going to really vibe with. And but the other thing is that if you're not getting 32,000 views, if you're getting 32 views, or if you're getting 2 views, that's some people, that's someone that you've impacted and has actually listened to your art. And I think that's an important thing to remember is that the numbers, the vanity metrics make you feel good and give you a little dopamine hit. But the main thing is that you're actually doing it for yourself, and you're actually putting yourself out there and sharing your art. So
and I think if you want to be a professional artist and you really want to launch a life supporting career, then all that stuff's really important. But if for me, the real desire is I just want to make the music,
Yeah.
And I think if your music turns out great, people are going to respond to it too. So it's sort of like, if you love making music, you have a better chance that your music is going to turn out great. And if your music turns out great, you got a better chance that people will dig it.
Totally true. Very cool stuff. The guitar tone in there. So just talk us through that again, because really loved that. So that's amplitude.
That's the electric guitars. Yeah. I did there's some acoustic in there too, but I did a pair of electric guitars, and it's just amplitude. I mean, it was an old one too. This is like back in 2010 or something like that, 2011. Maybe a little later than that. But it's pretty amazing what you can do with Amp Simulator stuff. Right now, today, I was just experimenting with Guitar Rig from Native Instruments. And it just sounds so good now, especially like with the advancements in signal processing and computers and everything. Logic guitar tones sound totally cool. Now, I do think that it's smart to experiment with your sample rate if you're going to do those things, because synthesizers have this issue, and I think guitar amps do too, where the frequencies that get generated go way up into the high above hearing range. And if you're doing it all in a session that's at 44.1, then they have to do this hard cutoff on the frequency at the top of the range. And that actually can cause frequencies to fold back into the sound. You don't really notice it, but you do. So if you get a chance to just set it to like 96K instead of 48K or 44.1, it's worth experimenting to see if that will improve the sound of your guitar tones through an amp. Simulator.
There you go.
Preamp simulator.
Amp sim. Well, yeah. See, I like that because that's to be honest, one of the only practical advice and reason I've ever been given for 96K. I mean, obviously, a lot of people say I recorded 192 32-bit floating point, and because I've got all the stuff, and it's like, well, I don't hear any difference. But yeah, when you're talking about that in terms of those high frequencies, having that the extra sampling rate is actually going to help with that. So yeah, and because a lot of folks are now using Logic Pro on iPad, yeah, you can start experimenting with this. GarageBand was locked at 44.1, which has been a challenge for some folks.
Yeah.
But if you're using Logic,
Well, yeah, challenges are good. They just give you a good framework for creative stuff.
Now we have folks asking about your microphone there, which is a very unique sort of mic that you're using there, Lidge, and you've given some info there. You want to talk us through?
This one right here. Yeah. So I wanted to have an old school talkback mic in the studio. I don't want to lean in and press a button and say, "Hey, do it again. This time with feeling." And so I was like, "There's got to be something I can get." So I ended up finding a gooseneck microphone, like on Amazon or Sweetwater. It's probably $100 mic. And then, it's got the little foam thing on it. And then it goes down into a little weighted mic base. And then that actually plugs into its own preamp because it didn't have, well, there are ones that would just go USB, you don't have to do that. But I'm very, very critical of the sound. I really wanted to if it didn't sound good to me, I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm using one of those old ART tube mic preamp boxes because I had one, and then I just carefully worked the levels until it finally was, the gain was turned up enough to sort of give it a warm tone. And then that goes over and goes into my Black Lion Revolution 2x2 interface, which is, the one that I use for the computer. If I'm going to listen to a YouTube video I'll switch over to the system audio. And I figured, the output of the computer doesn't sound that great. So why not just get like a second little interface just for the computer sound?
Very cool. I like it. We've got about 15 minutes left here, folks. Lidge, is there anything? We've got a couple of questions here, which I'll throw your way. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about, let folks know about, or just generally rant about while we've got you here?
Well, let's see. I mean, if you're, I'll give a shout out to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you're a fan of podcasts and you love sort of listening and learning about recording, I encourage you to go check it out. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And there's more episodes now than you can possibly listen to in quite a while of listening. I think I've done over 1,000 hours of interviews now at this point. But there's so many great ones. That was the one we just did. And I'm so honored to have been able to do an interview with Tom Lord-Alge. That's Chris Lord-Alge's brother. And I had worked with him back in 99, and it was just really cool to circle back and finally have him on the podcast. He makes great sounding rock records. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So you listen to the podcast if you're interested in just getting some good basic mixing tips for how do I get my mix to sound more like a song, more like a mix that sounds like it's on the radio, something that sounds a little more pro. Then I've got a free mixing course that I put together called mixmasterbundle.com. If you go there, you can just sign up and puts you on the email list, and it sends you my sequence. I think it's actually about 2 hours of videos. So you get some good stuff in there, and it'll just help you. And that's the Academy. We've got other stuff like once you do go through Mix Master Bundle, and if you get to a point where you're ready for really advanced mixing stuff, check out the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass with Craig Alvin. That is awesome. I learned a ton, and I'm using that stuff all the time.
Press the wrong button. Cool. Yeah, that's really, really cool stuff. And it's something that I know many folks have been listening to the podcast for a long time. And you're the album Skadoosh, if I've got the right name on that.
Skadoosh, yeah, that's my instrumental record that is also the soundtrack for the podcast.
Yeah, which is very cool. So yeah, if you've been around the podcast for a while, you'll know all about that, and have heard Lidge promoting Recording Studio Rockstars and the Mix Master Bundle. So jump on over there and check it all out. RecordingStudioRockstars.com is a good place to start.
Let's do some Q&A. I saw that there's definitely some questions popping up.
We do, yeah. I've tagged a few of these, so we've answered that one. We'll jump back to Mr. Thomas Christ. Would like to know, what is your go-to vocal processing chain and any new plugins you're digging for vocals?
Okay, so on that spring song, that was probably my U67. I do have one really nice vintage microphone, the U67 Neumann. I probably sang into that and ran that into a CalRec mic pre that I have. Don't know if I did any EQ. And then I would sometimes go through an 1176 compressor, Universal 1176, and then into the CalRec compressor doing a form of double compressing, which really can sound great. And so that's probably what I did to record those vocals. Recently, I've been cutting vocals here with these two rock artists that I'm working with, where they both decided to use the U67. And then that goes again through the CalRec mic pre, no EQ, just find the right gain level, and then directly into the 1176 and straight to Pro Tools from there. And that really, 1176 is a great compressor for aggressive and powerful vocals and rock vocals and things like that. If you need something that really controls the sound, if you can record into it and you can just blast it so the needle goes like that. And I'll take the input gain. It's one of the tricks I learned. Also with a Shure SM7B, if you have that microphone, it can sound really good to sing into that and then go into an 1176. And you can do this with the plug-in too, and just crank the input up. And it starts to distort the 1176 in a really cool sort of fuzz tone vocal way. But the gain gets so high that you run the risk of feedback from your headphones even into the mic. So watch out for that, and don't turn your speakers on. But for a record that I'm working on now, I'm trying to finish a 5-song EP that hopefully it'll be out at some point here soon. And that one, I decided, all right, Lidge, you got a chance to shoot out every mic in your studio, and I might have 100 mics now. Not all that I would use on vocals, but I was like, I should at least find out which mic I really actually want to use for my voice. And so I tried everything. And in the end, the mic I liked the most on my voice for that project is the Roswell Pro Audio Delphos, which I think is a 67 capsule. And they've since released the Delphos 2, which also sounds great. But in this case, it was actually the Delphos 1 mic, and it just sounds awesome. And I did a combination of stuff. I think I did the CalRec mic pre into the 1176 compressor, into the CalRec compressor, and then into the Tegeler Audio manufacturer Veritube recording channel. And I dialed all three of those in until I had the sound that was awesome. So if you have real compressors, or if you can sing through plug-in compressors, and give yourself the chance to really dial it and tweak it and everything and listen until you love the sound of it in your headphones, it can be a pretty cool way to find your own vocal sound.
Cool. Yeah.
A little trickier if you got a different singer, because you don't want to wear somebody else who's singing. You don't want to wear them out while you like experiment, unless it's a free day, or something like that. You're not trying to get something to keep yet.
Yeah, I love that, because every bit of advice you said there was about setting it up at the front end and getting the right sound, because I think that can affect the performance as well. If you're sounding good, if you get a good sound that you're actually recording with, even if you need to tweak it in post, like, again, there's no fixing it in the mix, folks. Get it sounding the way you want it to sound as early in the process as possible, or you'll be chasing your tail for a long time. But I think you and Joe Gilder and Graham Cochran and very smart people taught me that early on, is that, like, there is no magic. People think there's this magic fixing in the mix. No, get your sound the way you want it as early as you can. You'll be good to go.
You get super, I'm always amazed at, like, I can get the greatest sound and tracking and still have to do a ton to it in the mix.
Yeah,
it happens. So it really are just no rules, just the only rule is make it sound great.
Yeah, and trial
and error until you get it.
Yeah, and exactly. And if you don't have all the gear, as we always say here, yeah, there's cheap and free compressors that are 1176 clones that you can just play around with and just experiment. You'll never know till you try it, so you might as well give it
Yeah.
a try.
Thomas mentioned getting the SM7B. So it's a great mic. You'll love it. It's very, it sort of compresses voices and it complements a wide range of voices. So you could use it on female vocals, male vocals, your own voice, backgrounds. So it's a very versatile mic. However, it requires a lot of gain and it can be very noisy. And if you have noise that's in your system that appears the more you gain it up, I actually do now with my Calrex. If I have to gain them up a lot, there's weird like stuff going on that mic can bring it out. So that's one of the benefits of a condenser mic is it's a hotter signal output. So you don't have to turn things up quite as much to sort of reveal problems. And yeah, go ahead.
No, so yeah, we've got a couple more questions here because I'm conscious of time. We did want to get this one to an hour. So Mix Club has asked, what do you like best on the UC1, the 4KB, or the Channel Strip 2? That's a very specific question.
I use the Channel Strip 2 a lot. It was the first one I had, so I'm very used to it, and it's more, it has more flexibility in it. I don't remember all the specifics, but it does things the way that the controller is laid out. The 4KB sounds amazing, and it has features that aren't in the Channel Strip 2. I think it has a de-essing. It has like, you can overdrive the input, mic pre. And then I did a mix on something I was experimenting, and I did a mix with the Channel Strip 2. And then I was like, oh, what happens if I just put the the 4KB after it? So both plugins are in there, and it sounded even better. So I would think about the 4KB as having a little bit more tone to it and a little bit more of a harmonic imprint and saturation quality. So that could be a nice additional boost to the sound too. You might actually want to just run them back to back. But again, it's all experimenting. The channel strips are really great. Sometimes I'll want a channel strip at the beginning and I dial in the sound, but then I do a bunch of processing to it, but then I'll want another one at the end. So that now I've taken that new sound and dial it in so that it hits the mix the right way. So there can be reasons to run more than one.
Cool. Trial and error, folks. That's a good answer to a lot of things. Here's a bit of a fun one. If you could only have one guitar for the rest of your life to record and play live, what would it be?
Well, if the reason for that was we were in the apocalypse and I had to keep moving about all the time, then I'd probably want to have my little acoustic Martin backpacker guitar, which is so light. And that's what I take with me now every time I go on a trip. I'll just grab that because you could hike. You could easily hike up, and then take a break at the top of a little mountain or something and play on it. And it sounds awesome. It's really fun. Plays well, sounds awesome. And if I had one guitar for the rest of my life, I'd probably cry. But I've had a Strat for a long time and I really like it. But I'm sort of excited to I really want to get a 335 in here. I want to get a SG. I want to get a Telly, and then I want to up my acoustic game. So I went looking for, shopping around for an acoustic, and I have to say the Martins, they really are the acoustic for me. So I think when I get a really nice acoustic, it's going to be a Martin. So I don't know if that helps, but at least it gives you some brands to think about.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. And I'll have to look up that backpacker. That sounds like a cool guitar. I've always been like, I'm traveling, but I can't be bothered. Like I got a Taylor and it's too clunky to bring around when I go out and about. So that's it. That's cool stuff. Two more questions
like
here.
$150 when I got it or something.
Yeah,
like that.
wow.
It's not expensive.
Love it. We'll sneak in a couple of questions. The UA, the Universal Audio Luna. Have you seen and heard of the system?
Yeah.
Have you got any views on it?
Yeah, I do, Scott. I haven't used it myself yet, but I think I've heard great reports from people I trust. And I think what's really important about it is, and I'm glad you brought it up, is because what I was just talking about, where you can, double compress, triple compress, get a sound when you're recording. Universal Audio and Luna gives you that ability. Again, I haven't used it. I don't know quite what the limitations are on latency, but I think it's designed, if you're using the right UA interface, to give you near zero latency, kind of like my Pro Tools HDX system, which also does that. I can't stand latency, so I'll put up with it in mixing, but for recording, I just encourage you all to become very aware of what latency is and try and avoid it when the first chance you get.
Yeah.
All the pro studios in Nashville, we always just took that for granted. That's why Pro Tools HDX is something we would get here. And the original Pro Tools had low latency too, but you put certain plugins on and it creates latency, and so you're stuck. You can't record through them. And then you put other plugins on and it's low latency, so you actually can record through them. So with that, I would say the UA Luna is probably a great choice, because if you can commit those sounds, there's no reason to have a million plugins around on your track. Just commit them, record through the chain, and just record it onto a track.
Yeah, no, very cool stuff. Yeah, you can go check that out. If you don't know what we're talking about at all, go just search UA Luna and you'll find out more about that. Final question. We got 1 minute left here on the show. Many Vibes would like to know, what is the coolest bar in Nashville?
Oh my gosh, the coolest bar. I don't go out to bars enough to answer that question anymore. I mean, I remember what the coolest bar was in Murfreesboro next to our college. We'd always go to the Borough. And then there is a really cool one called Dee's Music Lounge, which is up in Madison near me. And it's very casual. And right now I'm much more interested in going out to an open mic writers night if I want to go check some stuff out. And I don't want it to be a hassle for parking and stuff like that. So I'll go up there, and that's pretty fun. That was started by my buddy Daniel Walker and his wife Amy. So kind of a cool vibey place. But there's great stuff right here in East Nashville. I mean, I can walk a block from my house and across the street, and there's the East Room, which to me is a very cool, like, punk rock kind of establishment. And then, or you can go to the left over to the Cobra, and it's another punk rock place. And there's a place called the 5 Spot, which is really cool. So write those names down. Those are all good starters.
I've got to get to Nashville. Yeah, last time I was in the US, it was very much a West Coast flying visit to do the family theme park stuff. But once the kids are grown up and they don't care about that, I think my next stop's going to be to hit up Nashville next time I'm over stateside. So
let me know when you're coming, dude.
Very, very, very cool stuff. Well, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Lidge. Do you commit to making this a springtime tradition here? First day of spring here in Australia. Yeah. Let's do it every year.
Springtime every time.
So very, very cool. And to get just a different insight from someone like yourself who's been there in the trenches in Nashville and recording a lot of different artists, I think hopefully folks have taken, if you the one thing that you've taken away from this today, then that's a good thing. Maybe one little tip, one little bit of advice for your songwriting or your recording. And if folks want to check out what you're doing over there, Lidge, recordingstudiorockstars.com, or the YouTube channel, they're all linked down in the description. Folks can jump on over there.
Please do. And, the biggest thanks is to all of you for coming and joining us on this live stream. You rock. 100%. Keep making great music.
You do rock indeed. Thanks, everyone. We've got something that I like to go out with, Lidge, which is I like to say that folks should be kind to themselves. They should be kind to others, and they should keep creating and be a rock star. Nice one. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We'll see you next time here on Studio Live today. Happy spring. Happy Songtember.